For the past while, I've been working my way through the Luigi's Mansion trilogy and comparing them to see how things have evolved. The first one I found to be an interesting concept with a focus on replayability and optimization. Dark Moon, though, was a fantastic expansion. While it fell short in some areas, such as the bosses and tutorial, the heavier focus on puzzle solving and the new mechanics more than made up for it. Now, with the spirit of Halloween once again in the air, it's time for me to finish what I started. And by that I mean I started playing a month early with the hope that I'll finish this video on time. Without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Kardino. This game will be interesting to look at for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's the first retrospective I've made on a game that's actually newer than my channel. Second, this one seems to be the fan favorite. Sure, some still say the original has a unique charm to it, but for the most part, I remember little to no common complaints about this one. So let's see how much I agree, and how likely I'm gonna hold the unpopular opinion again. Starting things off with the presentation, it's clear to see that Next Level Games really put some elbow grease into the visuals. This is one of, if not the best looking game on the system. Not to mention, the animations are of extremely high quality. As before, we open with an intro sequence, this time seeing Mario, Peach, and Luigi accept an invitation to a mysterious hotel in the middle of nowhere. But after checking in for the night, it turns out that King Boo is back, ready to trap them all in paintings. Who could have foreseen this happening at a place called The Last Resort, owned by someone named Helen Gravely? So of course Luigi is the only one to escape by jumping down a laundry chute, where he's presumably saved from death by Polterpup. One quick note about this intro though, you can really tell that Charles Martinet was brought in to record new voice clips, and as delightful as they are, it does seem like his Luigi voice is different, just something odd that struck me when I first heard it. We're now on the tutorial floor where we find a new Poltergust and learn the basics. I think this floor instantly won people over. No more constant calls from Elvin telling you how to run. In fact, you're expected to find out several mechanics on your own. This includes the main new technique, the slam. Basically, instead of simply taking a chunk of health from a ghost when the meter fills, you can now slam them into the ground to inflict major damage. And if there's any ghosts in its path, they'll be hit too. It's definitely fun at first, but I have some reservations which I'll talk about later. Anyway, by the end of the tutorial, we find ourselves on the second floor, where Egad's portrait is on full display. I guess he was also lured here so he could share ghost portraits with the hotel owner, like they're some kind of Pokemon? Imagine dying and your afterlife just consists of sitting in a painting being shown off to ghost enthusiasts. Well, of course, Helen lets them all out, and I guess out of the kindness of her heart, each one has a floor on the hotel built just for them. So the goal now becomes to traverse the entire hotel, recapture the ghost collection, and find all of Luigi's friends. I know I just spent the past bit basically just expositing the plot, but the weird thing is, that's all we get for the rest of the game. There'll be an occasional cutscene of Helen watching you and getting angry, or King Boo taking Peach and Mario's portraits, but that's really all. From here, the basic gameplay loop is to explore each floor, fight a boss, then move on to the next floor using a collected elevator button. I find this interesting because it makes the game feel like a series of episodes, which is very similar to Dark Moon. The best missions there had the mansion change in some way, whether it be balloon plants growing in new places, a wall of ice blocking your path, or even just suits of armor vanishing. Granted, there were some times when the professor would arbitrarily stop you from going through a door, but at their best, the missions allowed for some dynamic level design. Don't get me wrong, it was still linear, as are all Luigi's mansions, but I think one of the things people didn't like about 2 was not allowing you to explore. But the thing about that is that outside of 2 secret rooms, everything stayed mostly static in the original. Ultimately, it was just a matter of going to a room, getting a key, and moving on to the next room. Backtracking didn't really help too much, and the locked doors didn't let you explore anything out of order. And that same restriction basically applies here. Each floor pretty much remains static. You unlock everything in the same order, and there are only a few secret rooms to find. So, has the system really been improved? Outside of EGAT's calls being less frequent, I don't really think so. Of course, the main objection here would be the variety of themes you see. There are lots of memorable floors like the movie studio, the IT department, and the music venues. But once again, we're talking about the feel, and there's a difference between exploring one or several big locations and going through a bunch of smaller ones. Each floor seems almost entirely disconnected from the others. When each theme only sees between 15 minutes to an hour of use, it makes the game feel like a series of novelties. And of course, don't take that to mean I didn't like the system or anything, but I don't really see it as the massive improvements that others seem to believe it to be. It's just a different type of good thing. But of course, I'm talking from an overhead perspective. So let's go through floor by floor so I can get a bit more specific. First up is floor 5, RIP Suites. It's where that intro's chase sequence happened, but here, we're tasked with heading to the other side and fetching EGAD's newest invention from this ghost maid. There's also a secret area we can access by the elevator if we want some gems and money. Gems, by the way, work the exact same way as the last game, so there's no substantial benefit to getting them all. Still, they're fun enough to look for, and you even get an achievement for completing a floor. I find it funny how the Switch doesn't have a trophy system or anything, so they just tacked one on here. I hope for the sequel, we'll be able to unlock stuff for our profile picture or something. It seems like something they'd be willing to do. Anyway, we're also taught how to use a plunger, which is a new move allowing us to latch onto smooth surfaces and give them a yank. One thing you'll quickly notice is how destructible the environment is this time, and it's a lot of fun to see how much you can destroy a room. It's yet another mechanic similar to your dark light that makes you keep an eye out for things you can interact with, and I hope the mechanic sticks around. With the 5th floor complete, we're now introduced to Luigi, which acts as both a co-op and alternate character. It can basically move through fences, ventilation shafts, and spiky hazards to reach new places. Otherwise, it has all the same abilities as Luigi, with its one weakness being solubility with water. But with its own health bar and near instant revival time, it's basically a better Luigi with less personality. It'll be yet another vital tool throughout our adventure, so let's head to floor 3, the hotel shopping center. The goal here is to make it into the security guard's office by basically doing a trading quest through the different stores. It's here where you'll first make heavy use of Luigi to bypass the gates and access the cash registers. I'd hardly call it a puzzle, but we're still in the beginning stages of the game, so I don't mind. Anyway, we fight this goofy mall cop ghost and gain access to the rest of floor 2. Something to note is one more advantage this game has over Dark Moon. As much as I don't think the missions themselves are remarkably better, one thing I cannot deny is that going between floors is much faster now. Instead of using the pixelator every time a mission ends and talking to the professor, here you just take the elevator back up. And if anything important happens at the lab, you can instantly teleport back. I honestly think this is why most people don't mind the game structure this time, and I can't say I blame them. We now head back to floor 2 with common hotel amenities. This time we obtain a button from the restaurant chef pretty quickly, only for 2 rats to eat it. So we have to chase them down through a few rooms. We'll soon notice that this is a common method the game employs to have you explore the rest of a floor, and Dark Moon fans will recognize that it seems to be a favorite tactic of next level games. chase down the ghost with the gears, chase down some other ghosts with the pinwheel vanes, and now chase down these rats with the elevator button. It's not a huge issue, but I don't see why we can't just use the locked door system from before. Maybe it's so that you can explore the other rooms early, but exploring someplace ahead of time only to return 10 minutes later doesn't seem too exciting for me. At this point, we also gain access to the EGAD shopping network, which allows us to buy a gold bone, gem finder, or boo finder. I can definitely see completionists finding these things useful, but I really don't feel the need to revisit. The controller will already rumble when there's a boo nearby, and the game showers you with hearts, so you go into most battles with full health. Oh yeah, before I forget though, boos are also back and act the same way as they did in Dark Moon. So there's no need to seek them out unless you want an excuse to backtrack. My main complaint with the shop is that it's a severe downgrade from last time. In 2, you could upgrade both the suction power of the Poltergust and the battery of the Darklight. But with the latter being infinite and all permanent upgrades being found by the second hour, there's no in-game reward for collecting money other than seeing a number go up. And yeah, that is kinda satisfying, but it still seems like a step backward. Now obviously there is a purpose toward the end of the game, but more on that later. Next is a concert hall, and it's pretty much just a boss arena. There is a hallway and some side rooms, but you'll basically be done in about 20 minutes. The boss itself is an evil pianist who throws chairs and even the piano itself at you. The key here is using your plunger and gradually smashing the piano. After we've sucked up the boss, we're awarded with both an elevator button and the first toad. Which is weird because we saw him with King Boo earlier. Why does a random ghost have it? I guess King Boo doesn't really care about them? Now, you may think this is going to lead to an escort mission, but nope. You just walk him back to the elevator and see him off. Almost no escorting required. For now, anyway. But with one toad down, I dare say we finished the beginning portion of the game. This is also the point where the floors start becoming more and more bizarre. Floor 6 turns out to be castle themed, and there's basically no connection to the hotel theme whatsoever. I guess you could view it as some restaurant coliseum facility, like some kind of haunted medieval times, but you can tell they weren't really too concerned about consistency here. It's decently fun as a level, though in my opinion feels even more linear than usual. It's one thing to have a bunch of rooms be accessed in a certain order, but it's something else to basically just lay out a bunch of locked doors in a line. I think it would be really cool to explore a haunted castle, but here I can't say the layout feels very believable. Nonetheless, I did enjoy my time here. I just would like to see this idea revisited. Next up is floor 7, the Garden Suites. This floor is alright. It begins with Luigi instantly finding the button before dropping it on the ground where it's eaten by a plant. This evil gardener then makes the thing giant-sized, forcing you to climb your way to the top. It's interesting to see the plant theme fully return from 2, but this time, the visuals and destructible environment make it quite the looker. It's unfortunately another hallway floor, but I still think I prefer it to Castle McFrights. Admittedly, a good portion of that comes from this table saw thing. Giving me a tool to destroy everything in a room will definitely give you bonus points. The fight itself is also pretty clever, which sees you cutting the stems of evil carnivorous plants. We now move on to Paranormal Productions, once again forgetting that this is supposedly a hotel. There's a reason this one's a fan favorite. It's basically a better version of the shopping center and sees you taking part in different movie scenes to obtain props. These props are then brought to other scenes until you eventually receive the megaphone. You're then cast as a hero in a kaiju battle film, though I don't know how good of a job you really do at defending the city when most of it gets destroyed. It's a real high point for the game, immediately followed by one of the lowest. Remember those Polterpup missions in the last game? The blatant padding that nobody liked? Yeah, they're back. But since Polterpup is Luigi's pet now, his role is filled by Polter Kitty, owned by Helen Gravely. It just comes out of the wall and steals the next elevator button. So it's time to backtrack through the floor before doing a peekaboo style fight. Even worse, it then goes back down to the garden suites and makes you scale them almost all the way before you can finally catch it. And as one last kick in the face, it runs away at the last second just like Polterpup. So you now get to play knowing that anytime you collect a button, this cat could just appear and kill your mood. It's like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head anytime you enter the elevator. With that foreboding feeling, we move on to the Unnatural Museum on floor 9. Like the performance hall, it's basically just a boss arena. Honestly, it's a little sad it's this small. The idea of haunted artifacts is really cool, and I'm somewhat inevitably reminded of Night at the Museum. But all of its screen time seems to have been taken by that backtracking mission. Anyway, you fight the skeleton of a dinosaur, which is actually a pretty unique boss. I don't think any other fight in the game makes you use Luigi as bait. But once you destroy the skeleton and capture the ghost possessing it, we now have the button to the Boiler Works, located on B2. We also find the second toad. This next level is another one of the more well-remembered ones, usually being a love it or hate it kind of deal. Luigi wakes this mechanic up from his nap, and in response, he floods the entire floor. And I guess Luigi can't swim with the poltergust on? But anyway, the main portion of this stage is a long hallway where Luigi runs on the side, opening gates for Luigi to pass through on his floaty. Once we reach the end, we can drain the water and have a sea battle. Well, sort of one anyway. For my part, I find this floor sort of fun, but I can't say I fully enjoy it for reasons we'll discuss shortly. Anyway, next up is floor 10, home of the Tomb Suites. You would think it'd just be another idea taken from 2, but it goes for a more straightforward Egyptian pyramid theme rather than a clock factory. This one is mostly memorable because of all the deadly traps around, and I really mean deadly. Luigi falls down a sand trap and has to complete 3 puzzles to escape. But these puzzles are timed with instant death waiting if you don't solve them in time. We also see the return of mummies, so despite the mediocre boss, I'd have to give this floor a high grade. By the way, this is around the point where you'll really start to notice how easy the combat is this time. The slam mechanic is so overpowered that no horde of ghosts will ever really challenge you. For instance, the mummies are supposed to add an extra layer. You either have to make them run into a wall or burn up their wrappings, and needless to say, trying to manage 4 mummies plus whatever ghosts might be around could lead to some sticky situations. But here, you just have to unravel one, slam the ghost into his buddy, and just follow the chain. Any ghost nearby will start cowering as soon as you start flinging its pal around. And while I appreciate the realistic and somewhat comedic detail, you basically can just stun lock an entire group. We now move on to the Twisted Suites. I must say, this is one of my favorite levels in the game. The entire thing is themed around magic, so you'll be catching a rabbit key, fighting in upside down rooms, and passing by classic props. You know the ones, the box which you saw in half, towers of playing cards and dice blocks. It's one of the most memorable places to me, not only because of the theme, but because of what happens. You'll be chasing these 3 magicians around the map, and just when you think you have them cornered, they shuffle all the rooms and make you find your way back to the arena. Plus, the fight itself is no joke. It was actually only one of 2 times where I got a game over. Speaking of, I'm surprised darker elements like this didn't get rated E10. Well, let's head to floor 12, the Spectral Catch. It's another restaurant with a pirate theme this time. By the way, we've only got a few floors left. At this rate, we'll be at the top in a couple hours. Well, apparently, the devs decided that was a bad thing, because we got yet another backtracking mission. At first, it doesn't seem so bad. An end of a boat is blocking the door for some reason, and Egad calls in to tell us that we need an upgrade to our poltergust. At this point, I was confused why it was coming so late, but nonetheless excited. but the way you unlock it is through a retread of B2, which in my opinion sours its entire experience. Basically, it becomes a Toad rescue and escort mission where you have to do a lap of the entire floor, plus maybe 1 or 2 extra puzzles. Maybe it was just because I was feeling crabby, but I also noticed that the ghost battles started to feel more like an interruption. It was a feeling that gradually increased, but every time I was forced to fight one, it just felt like I had stuff to do and they were getting in my way. Which surprised me because I obviously like Luigi's Mansion. I think it just goes to show how little progression the combat has seen in a long time. Again, aside from bosses, I'd go through long stretches of time without even taking meaningful damage. But hey, we've got this new upgrade, so that means the combat will see a new twist thrown in, right? Well, that rhetorical question should already tell you the answer. It turns out this upgrade is tethered to special wall sockets. Plugging in will give you super suction and will allow you to destroy almost anything in a room. And what is it used for? Not enhanced combat, not even for a one-off boss fight, but only to access the restaurant door. Aside from this one instance, you never need it again. In fact, I looked it up on the wiki and there are only 2 other sockets in the whole hotel, both of which are just used to find gems. Remember when 2 had those shields you had to counter? Yeah, no use bringing them back. Well, seeing as we basically spent 45 minutes getting a key, let's see what this floor has to offer. Turns out this is another boss floor, this time featuring a ghost shark. It's fun enough, and you even get the last Toad, along with an elevator button. But like the museum, it feels like this floor's screen time was just taken up by backtracking. 2 times doesn't make a pattern, but it does start one. The next floor up, we find ourselves in the fitness center, stomping ground of Johnny Deepend. And might I just say, what a name. This level's alright. I don't have too many feelings on it either way. We've seen the formula before. Do a puzzle, unlock the next door, get interrupted by ghosts, repeat. At least those puzzles are satisfying to figure out here. I especially like the one in the stretching room. The boss fight isn't too bad either, using both Luigi and Guigi again. But don't get too excited because guess who's back? The Sword of Damocles itself. And it doesn't just make you backtrack through this floor and the last either. It even makes you head back to the Twisted Suites and find it. I wonder if they knew how annoying this mission was, because this time, Polterpup joins you in the search. The only consolation you get here is that you finally capture the cat. But 2 filler missions back to back? The next floor had better be good. And it is. The dance hall is a great aesthetic with good music to boot. But it's yet another boss hallway. And just like that, we've got 3 in a row. At this point, I'm sure the only reason the performance hall didn't have something like this was because it was too early in the game. Anyway, the boss fight is a ball and cup game, followed by the usual dodge and flash process. Kinda sad considering the Twisted Suites did the concept better, but I still give it a pass for the music. Even Luigi will get into it. Finally, we make it to the Master Suite, home of some fun laser puzzles. But I think the main takeaway here is just how obsessed Helen is with King Boo. Statues, framed pictures, an elaborate lock system, she might as well be a Swiftie. Her fight is pretty fun though. It was even the second time I got a game over, mostly because I wasn't paying enough attention. As you'd expect, it's another Luigi-Guigi combo deal. And as a reward for clearing it, we free Mario and close in on King Boo. The final battle is a considerably lesser fight than Dark Moon's. I feel like that one had a lot more memorable segments, and it's a shame they just went with a basic cup and ball challenge yet again. Anyway, the hotel collapses, Polterpup saves us yet again from splatting on the ground, and we get to save everyone. But, plot twist, the capsule containing the ghosts breaks. It's another marathon challenge like before, right? Well, no. King Boo's crown was the thing making them hostile, I guess. and after it shatters for story reasons, they're pacified and everyone decides to help them build a new home. Not the bosses though. They get to stay in Egad's personal collection for him to observe and show off to his peers again. As a last surprise, we're given a ranking based on how much money we finish the game with. It's a bit deceptive seeing as they encourage you to spend money on the shopping network. I can see what they were thinking, lower your final score in exchange for assist items. But they never tell you you'll be ranked. Not to mention the thresholds are a little questionable. 30,000 or less gets you a rank C, and anything 70,000 or above gives you a rank A. And here I thought collecting 50 stacks was impressive, but I guess it's worth just as much as my original 40k playthrough. Even despite that though, I honestly don't know why they bothered including this system at all. LM1 was only a 6-hour game on repeat playthroughs. LM2 ranked the missions and factored in damage and money. Meanwhile, LM3 is over 10 hours long, even longer if you're actually going for that A rank. It's a bit of a reach if you ask me. And evidently, you're supposed to explore previous floors for anything you could have missed. But there's almost no in-game incentive to do so, since your abilities never change from floor 5. Well, save for super suction, but even then, it only appears in 2 other places. I just don't think the game is designed in a way that fits the arcade-style system. And I'll say it again, Dark Moon already found a solution. Just give each floor a ranking and give us Poltergust upgrades. But with that, we've finished the story, so let's briefly cover the extras. First up is the return of Scarescraper. You might recall that I love this mode on the 3DS, even if it definitely felt like a side option. So with the sequel, they didn't really do too much. They definitely fixed the scaling at least. Players could drop in and out between rounds, and the size of the task always felt doable. And speaking of players, this mode supports up to 8 of them. That's pretty neat. In terms of aesthetics, the floors can take on a bunch of different themes this time, my favorite of which being the dance hall. It's a good step up from last time. But I do have some gripes with it. There's only 4 objectives this time: capture the ghosts, defeat the crows, collect the money, and rescue the toads. Right away, 2 of these modes are almost identical. Crows are basically just ghosts that don't need to be sucked up. Plus, collecting money simply means you have to shake any furniture you find. So the best mode remains to just capture the ghosts, which is probably why it picks that one about 70% of the time. In 2, each mode felt different. Rush felt much more frantic than ghost hunting, while Polterpup made use of your dark light. Sure, Polterpup hunting wasn't the best mode, but it was unique. Now, 2 of these modes are almost identical. One is just a side activity you did before, and Toad Rescue is just a ghost hunt with extra steps. Which I suppose is the same problem with Polterpup. You know what would have been cool though? Polter Kitty. It has a unique attack strategy that still would have required good use of the dark light. And I was particularly sad that Rush mode didn't return. Ultimately, the modes we have here aren't bad, but I would have liked to see them at least accompany other modes. They do shuffle them randomly as opposed to making you unlock a surprise mode. But that brings me to my next point. There's nothing to unlock. In the original, the collective amount of money the group earned would net you better equipment, while the Red Coin Scramble was a fun extra element that gave you chances at temporary items. All of those you just find in chests now. That's fine, but not as fun, you know? Meanwhile, there are still achievements, but they all basically amount to play a bunch of Scarescraper. There's none of those floor-by-floor achievements that you could share with your team. With all these little omissions and only minorly good additions, I can't say I prefer this one much more than last time, which is a real bummer. Alright, the other mode is Scream Park, and is a complete newcomer to the series. Honestly though, I don't know why they even made it. There are 3 multiplayer attractions here: Coin Floating, Ghost Hunt, and Cannon Barrage, but all of them are pretty surface level. In the first mode, you grab money while in a pool floaty. If you get hit by a bomb or an invincible opponent, you get flung outside and have to reinflate before continuing, while also dropping money for anyone else to pick up. It's fine as a minigame, but aside from stealing someone's money at the last minute, there's not much satisfaction to be had, at least in my experience. Then for Ghost Hunt, you're just running around a map while capturing ghosts. Whichever team gets the most wins. Simple enough to understand, but not much room for sabotage. Lastly, Cannon Barrage just sees you carrying balls to a barrel, before running around and activating the cannon. Whoever hits their rotating targets the most wins. Again, it's fun, but there's no real reason to enter your opponent's side unless you're completely out of ammo. For full disclosure, I played this mode 2-player because local multiplayer is already inconvenient enough to set up nowadays, let alone getting a bunch of dudes together to play some Luigi's Mansion minigames. Which I think is a fair criticism of the mode itself. They made these to support up to 8 players, but the main appeal is the story. So first of all, anyone who's played the campaign will have a significant advantage over the others. And also, I just don't think most people see this series as multiplayer focused. Neither do I think the gameplay loop lends itself to engaging competition like Mario Kart or Smash. Which is why, of course, they made a multiplayer DLC pack. For the low price of $10, you can add some more attractions to Scream Park, along with some costumes for Luigi to wear. Is this a bad deal? I couldn't properly say because I never got it. But it's definitely niche. You basically have to have a friend group who constantly plays Scream Park enough to justify it, or else really like the costumes in Scarescraper. To give it the benefit of the doubt though, I saw a decent number of people wearing them while playing online. I suppose if you're constantly active on this game 5 years after its release, you are the target demographic after all. You know, I got the feeling that this video will be perceived as fairly negative, which was not strictly my intention going in, because when I'm actually playing the game and looking at it from a surface level, I pretty thoroughly enjoy my time. It feels like a sightseeing tour of all the ideas the developers had for settings. But personally, I don't know if it lends itself well to replayability, which I would consider an important factor for the series. And it was while I was comparing it to 2 that I questioned if it's my favorite of the trilogy. And I think the main reason for that is how lauded the game was, while 2 was trashed. That sounds a little salty, so let me explain further. 2 was criticized for not following the same spirit as the first game. Plus, it had some structural issues, which included a lot of backtracking. But is 3 really that different? Sure, the professor doesn't interrupt you as much in the tutorial, and you aren't forced to return to the bunker nearly as often. But I definitely say it has the same filler problems as before. Plus, the environment and ghosts still look as cartoonish as ever. I don't even think they invented any new types of ghosts here either. They're all reskins from before. It has more and better boss fights, I'll give it that. But the mechanics? I almost definitely prefer 2. You feel way too overpowered here, and there's almost no progression. Plus, the incentive to actually collect money is almost completely removed. As for the floors themselves, they have no lack of creative themes, despite a few of them just being hallways. But are they better than 2? I think the difference is that the Evershade Valley mansions were a bit bigger. Obviously, you could only explore certain parts at a time, and it was still linear. But it really felt like you were exploring one big location instead of a bunch of small ones. I also think the maps were more encouraging of backtracking, since each mission changed a few things around. I said it before, but the static nature of the hotel floors just don't hit as hard. In terms of multiplayer, Luigi was a fun idea, but the extra modes didn't see much improvement. There are more options, but I just didn't find much more value. So once again, is Luigi's Mansion 3 good? Yes, absolutely. But I don't think it's the dramatic improvement over 2 that a lot of people seem to think. Nevertheless, it is neat to see them experiment with this series. There's a legitimate reason to favor any of them, and I'm sure that will be the case going forward. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.